Hello everyone, in this video we're going to learn about simple past and past perfect. When I went to the cinema, the film had started. We had heard about the accident before we saw it. Now let's start with the first example. When I went to the cinema, the film had started. Here we have two actions. Going to the cinema and the film starting. They both happened in the past, but one of them happened before the other one. So which one is action number 1 and which one is action number 2? When I went to the cinema, the film had started. Excellent. Action number 1 is the film had started. Action number 2, I went to the cinema. Remember, action number 1, we put had plus past participle. Action number 2, we use simple past. We had heard about the accident before we saw it. Which one is action number 1 and which one is action number 2? We had heard about the accident or we saw it. Which one is the first action? Excellent. We had heard about the accident is the first action. The second action is we saw it. Ahmed watched TV after he had finished his work. Sarah received a text message as soon as she had finished her work. Now, the first example. Ahmed watched TV after he had finished his homework. Which one is the first action? Had finished his homework or watching TV? Excellent. He had finished his homework is the first action. The second action, watching TV. Sarah received a text message as soon as she had finished her work. Which one is the first action? Excellent. The first action is she had finished her work. The second action, she received a text message. Reem left the room because Khalid had shouted at her. Now think. Which one happened first? Khalid had shouted at her or she left the room? Let's think. Excellent. The first action is Khalid had shouted at her. The second action, Reem left the room. Now let's see whether we have understood or not. Number 1. Suzanne had phoned Sam at work before she had left, leave for her trip. Now let's think. Which one is action number 1? Excellent. Suzanne had phoned. This one is action number 1. Had plus past participle. What about action number 2? What shall we choose? Let's think. Excellent. Before she left. Very good. After Fred had spent or spend his holiday in Italy, he decided to learn Italian. Here we have in the second clause decided, simple past. So can we say after Fred spends, present? No, we cannot use spends. Can we say spent? After Fred spent his holiday in Italy, he decided to learn Italian. That's incorrect. We cannot have two simple past in a sentence. Only one simple past. Can we say spend the? After Fred spent his holiday in Italy, he decided to learn Italian. No, we cannot, because spend here is present. So the correct answer is B. After Fred had spent his holiday in Italy, he decided to learn Italian. Why? Because here we have in the first clause should be had, verb 3 or past participle, and the second clause should be simple past. Once we have had, has had, have, had dinner, we went out for a short walk in the farm. So the second clause we have went, simple past. The first clause should be what? Can we say A, have had? Present perfect? No, because this is in the past. Can we say has had? Incorrect. Present and the sentence is in the past. And we cannot say we has. That's incorrect. What about have? Once we have dinner, we went out. The sentence is in the past. Can we say have? Have is present. That's incorrect. So the correct answer is once we had dinner, we went out for a short walk in the farm. When he at the stadium, the match had already started. When he arrived, arrives, or had arrived. Check the second clause. The match had already started. Had plus PP, past participle, verb 3. So can we say when he arrived at the stadium? No, because they said this is in the past. Can we say when he arrives? No, they said this is in the past. Can we say when he arrived at the stadium? Excellent, that's the correct answer. We cannot say when he had arrived at the stadium, the match had already started because we cannot have two past perfect in one sentence. If we already have past perfect, like the match had already started, that means the other clause should be simple past, arrived. When he arrived at the stadium, the match had already started. Now, no sooner, hardly, scarcely. She had no sooner arrived home than she started walking. Now, we have two actions that happened in the past. Which one is action number one? Let's think. Excellent. She had no sooner arrived home. That's action number one. What about action number two? Then she started walking. Excellent. Now, if you are asked to use no sooner in the beginning, no sooner, hardly, scarcely, if you use them in the beginning of a sentence, you will have to have inversion. You will have to have the word had before the pronoun or the subject. For example, no sooner had she arrived home than she started walking. Okay, you can have them no sooner, hardly, scarcely, either in the middle of a sentence or in the beginning of a sentence. But if you have them in the beginning of a sentence, you have to have inversion. You have to have the word had before the subject pronoun. No sooner, than, hardly, when, scarcely, when. Number 5. He had no sooner taken the medicine than he began to feel drowsy. Begin with no sooner. A. No sooner he had taken the medicine than he began to feel drowsy. No sooner he took the medicine than he began to feel drowsy. No sooner had he taken the medicine than he began to feel drowsy. Now remember, when you begin with no sooner, you have to have had before the subject or the pronoun. Now let's check the answers. No sooner he had. This one is incorrect. Where is the inversion? You have to have had before the subject or pronoun. What about B? No sooner he took. Incorrect. So the correct answer is C. No sooner had he taken the medicine than he began to feel drowsy. That's the correct answer. Now, what about number 6? After I had reached the station, the train came. Begin with hardly. A. Hardly I had reached the station when the train came. B. Hardly had I reached the station when the train came. Or C. Hardly did I reach the station when the train came. Now let's think. Remember, hardly, no sooner, scarcely. If you begin with them, you will have to have inversion. You will have to have the word had before subject or the pronoun. Now, which one is the correct answer? A, B, or C? Let's think. A, hardly I had reached the station when the train came. That's incorrect. What about C? Hardly did I reach the station when the train came. Also incorrect. So the correct answer is hardly had I. Hardly had I reached the station when the train came. That's it, and thank you for watching.